think one of the biggest things is we have to understand and rethink what work is and how work works. And so we've already talked about one of the fundamental things that I talk about with my clients and when I speak is work is a relationship, not a contract to be enforced. And so much of what we have in place today for management and HR policy is about contract enforcement, right? We pay you to deliver work product to us, and then we enforce that, which has worked fine. It's fine for contractual relationships. It's a terrible relationship building strategy.
Right.
And so, when you think about that, I always make the joke when I'm speaking, like imagine being in a marriage like that, where your spouse sort of never shows you affection, tells you they love you or cares about you, does anything like that, but frequently reminds you about your spousal obligations to them and how well you likely are not fulfilling those, right? That is not a recipe for a successful and happy marriage. That's a recipe for divorce. And yet, this is the reality most employees live in every single day.
Or imagine in a marriage, you're young and you're broke and you get married, and then one of the parties pulls out a prenup and says, all right, I just want to lay this out. Whatever I make in my lifetime is mine. Whatever you make is yours. But anyway, here, please sign this.
That's right.
It's like,
as long as you deliver on these behaviors and expectations, I'll be happy to
goodness.
share with you what I'm earning. So it's all kind of broken, right? Not great relationship building strategy. So number one is understanding work as a relationship. And in order for the workplace to work, we have to treat it like a relationship. We have to think about it like a relationship. And so we foster relationship through treating people in the way that they would want to, feeling valued and cared for, trusted, open communication, being accepted, cultivating earning commitment, right? All kinds of those things. So that's number one. Number two is sort of an unlearning. And this is something that I would say, one of the things that we don't understand often is that we inherited one of the things that gets in the way and is most problematic in the workplace is that we've inherited a legacy of management that is very flawed, and it's long overdue for an upgrade. And so just the short version of this is that the birth of management, I like to tell the story of the birth of management. I actually wrote about a couple chapters about this in my newest book, Unlocking High Performance. There's a couple chapters about this because I was really curious to understand the story. But you have to go back to late 1800s during the period of the Industrial Revolution when we had people migrating from smaller communities, like literally agricultural work or artisan work, coming to the cities for these new factory jobs that were being born, right? These big factories and assembly lines. And the reality about work at that time is that the work that was being done in those factories was work that was better suited for machines. Those machines, however, did not exist yet. We did not have the technology to build those machines yet. And so we needed human beings to stand in for those machines until we had them. Now, I mean, this isn't what they're talking about at the time, right? But that's what we know now in hindsight. The problem is human beings make for really poor machines. We're messy, we're inconsistent, we get distracted and tired, we talk to our neighbor, like there's lots of messiness, inefficiency in the system. And so the owners of these early factories realized, like, this is really inefficient. We need some way to get our people to behave more like machines, right? More consistent, less messy. And hence we created an entire body of practice and a new role called management. So management very literally was created. And Gary Hamel, the author, the sort of management guru, describes it the best. He said, management's intention upon invention was to get human beings to behave like semi-programmable robots. Now, in all of our modern practice of management was born in this time. All of the things we think about as management sort of was born and then evolved based on this model over a period of, 20, 30, 40 years. The problem then was that work started to evolve, right? Eventually we moved out of factories into these little tiny indoor cages called cubicles, and then beyond to other places. And work, instead of creating value with our muscles and dexterity and our back, we started creating value with our minds and our creativity and our ingenuity and our knowledge. But management never really adapted. It just kept getting passed down generation over generation over generation over generation, even as the work context changes. And so today we arrive at a place where management still operates largely the same. It's production-minded approach to things. Whereas we need a replacement. And the replacement that I recommend to this approach is what I call a cultivation mindset, or using the approach of cultivation. And so this is the second piece that if you're going to build a human-centered workplace, this is the second shift. Cultivation is how farmers and gardeners approach the performance and growth of other living things. I grew up on a farm, Northwest Iowa. I mentioned this before, grew up around farming. And what occurred to me as I reflected on this later in life, thinking about growing up, I was like, wait a minute, farmers are they're in the growth business. They're in the performance business of other living things. And yet they approach it very, very differently. You think about what a farmer does. A farmer goes out, puts a seed in the ground, and they make sure they put the right seeds in the right soil conditions, right? So you're not planting pineapples in Iowa, you're planting corn and soybeans or whatever. But then after that, well, even before that, when they put that seed in the ground, the thing about a farmer, they operate with 100% confidence that when they put that seed in the ground, it will grow into the maximum best potential version of itself, so long as it has what it needs to grow and it doesn't face any obstacles to get in the way or limit growth. And so then the farmer just dedicates themselves to making sure that those plants have what they need and that they deal with obstacles, right? They deal with weeds and insects, and they fertilize and they irrigate and they deal with that work is called cultivation. The farmer does not worry for 1 second about motivating their crops to grow faster or to be the best version of themselves. None of that goes on. This farmer just trusts that will happen. And when it's not happening, they don't go, well, those damn seeds are probably rotten, or we probably some, stupid seeds. They don't blame the seeds. They don't blame the plants. They know something's going on, because otherwise they'd be doing what they do. They're genetically hardwired to be the best, to grow into the best version of themselves. And what occurred to me is like, it's been here the whole time. The model we have been looking for has been here for literally thousands of years, right in front of us, because human beings, I believe, certainly more complicated, but the same principles apply. And so this is a shift that we have to make, is abandon production-minded approaches where we treat people like machines, adopt a cultivation approach. And Mark, if you'll humor me, I'm going to bring this point home in a way that will make people really uncomfortable.
Okay.
And that is the place where if you're like, well, what does that look like? I don't even understand what he's talking about. Then, okay, here it is. I want you to think about how we approach when we have an underperforming employee, somebody that's just, for whatever reason, can't make it work. They're struggling, they're underperforming, they're not behaving, whatever it is. Pick your favorite flavor of underperforming employee.
Mm-hmm.
Today, right? When managers show up and they want to talk to an HR rep about this underperforming employee, there's two questions they basically ask. There's two things they're thinking about. Those two questions are, how can we fix this broken employee, right? How do we fix them?
Yeah.
And if we can't fix them, how do we replace them with a better model? Do you know what else we talk about like that? Our cell phones, our cars, the machines in our house. That we still, that's what performance improvement plans and performance appraisals are designed to do, right? They are built around employees as a piece of machinery to either fix or replace. Cultivation, when you're facing that, the cultivator knows, well, wait a minute, that human being is genetically hardwired for growth and performance. We know this. We've seen, since if you look at an infant and how we learn to speak and talk and walk and move around and build, it's like by just being around other people doing it. It's amazing, our capacity for growth and performance. And I know that in my experience, I've never met a human being in my life who I believe, given the means and opportunity, wouldn't choose success over failure every single time. So I know that if they're underperforming, it's not because they are choosing it. It's not because there's anything wrong with them. If we've put them in the right situation, it's because they have an unmet need or there's an obstacle in their way. Guess what? My job is to fix that, because once I fix that, presto, they're going to do what they are naturally put on this planet to do. And so that's the difference. And that should make people uncomfortable, because I guarantee most of their management practices are built on production mindset. So work as a relationship, cultivation mindset, that's where it starts. If you can get those two things clear in terms of how you think about and approach work, everything else gets easier.